Hi guys, this is Brian, and we're just doing a catch up on news. And the topical issue of the moment is that the International Energy Agency has been talking again about oil. And this is what we're being told. I'll just read it to you. The world is heading for a catastrophic energy crunch that could cripple a global economic recovery because most of the major oil fields in the world have passed their peak production. A leading energy economist has warned higher oil prices brought on by a rapid increase in demand and a stagnation or even decline in supply could blow any recovery off course. Now, this is actually coming from the International Energy Agency, and it's pretty serious stuff. Anyway, just as a change to the way we've been doing things, we're going to go and have a chat shortly with one of our local people. In fact, there's two of them, and their names are John Robinson, who happens to be a PhD, has his PhD in mathematics, and his very good friend Ricky McLeod. So let's go and hear what both these people have got to say about the state of affairs in the world right now.
I'm Ricky McLeod. I'm part of the Island Bay World Service along with John Robinson. 18 months ago in the Island Bay Festival, we were standing on the street and looking at all the young people walking past us, small children 8, 9, toddlers, and we were thinking, what is the future going to hold for those kids? And it's not a good future that's coming, and I think really the time for us to be acting now and thinking seriously about what is coming is now. I'm hopeless, see?
Don't keep
Can I read something from a book which we have just published? The challenges of this 21st century are awesome. We head into a perfect storm in 2030 because so many disastrous trends are operating on the same time frame. Overpopulation, water and food shortages, climate change, depleted oil resources, economic depression, social breakdown and war. Millions of refugees will be fleeing to the few remaining lifeboat nations like New Zealand. So we've written a book to try to explain that to people. It's based on a tremendous amount of information, and here in Wellington we have other people who've thought about and written about these issues. We have, for example, Derek Wilson, who's written a very large book on 5 Holocausts. A great deal of information about some of the major trends in the world today. And I've written back in 1989 a book about excess capital, which follows through what's happening with the global economy at the moment, which look forward to just what is happening now, the whole depression as this whole bubble economy collapses. Now, all this is heavily science-based, and there should be an entire scientific discipline with university departments and government departments working on this, but there isn't, because the entire country, as most of the world, is in severe denial. Some of us have worked in this area, and we have now formed a small group called the Island Bay World Service, which is insisting that people should stop a moment, think about all these different issues and realise they're all interlinked. You can't separate out the oil shock from climate change, from the economic collapse, or from overpopulation. Population being the big forgotten issue there.
Okay, so Ricky, this morning I was looking at some dispatches from various newspapers that I look at online, and I picked up the International Energy Agency started to talk again, and it's got itself into the main media, and they're saying 5 years for oil. That's what we've got left. What do you think of that?
Well, I think that's pretty getting to be pretty optimistic. Um, we keep hearing these predictions of we've got 10 years left before we need to do something, we've got 8 years left before we need to do something, and those predictions have been coming thick and fast since 1970. So how long have we got left to do something?
Yeah.
Very
John, this International Energy Agency, of which you're familiar with, has made some pretty public statements, and this one recently, they've been fairly conservative with their thinking about oil and energy and the energy bank, but to talk about 5 years, that's really shortened things, hasn't it?
It's also nonsense. The International Energy Agency is one of those groups that the New Zealand government has quite foolishly and stupidly, against the thrust of all the other information, chosen to follow. A few years ago they were suggesting that perhaps there would be a peak around about 2035. The oil peak was last year. Now, we have many years of oil left, only there'll be less oil each year. The price will go up. There'll be more wars over oil. It takes a child to realise that. And I think that you're aware, as much as the rest of us, that Hubbard back in 1956 did his arithmetic and worked out that the United States oil would peak about 1971. And it jolly well did. So a lot of people have done similar scientific and careful work and suggested that world oil will peak about 2008, give or take a year or two, and it did.
Matthew Simmons and Colin Campbell said 2005. Do you disagree?
What's the difference between 2005 to 6, 7? You can't forecast to the dot.
Yeah, so you're saying that 2008 was really the year, but you'd be happy to accept 2005 anyway.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Well, I quote 2008 as in the middle of a range of forecasts.
Now, Ricky, that's actually more serious than actual climate change, because that's the collapse of everything.
Yes. Yep. Well, climate change, yes. The oil peak. With the oil peak, we need to be rethinking the way that we are going to develop our society in Wellington, in New Zealand, and but turning blind eye and burying your head and just thinking that things are going to carry on forever, which is what's happening here, isn't it, in Wellington?
And Dr. John Robinson, we have a need to do a paradigm shift, and there's no real sign that the seriousness of the situation is such that we need to do a complete rethink of how we operate and function as a culture. No real sign at all, really. We're just seeing business as usual.
There has been a huge change in 1984 in exactly the wrong direction. Now, do remember, as we talk about climate change and oil, that the far bigger problem is world population, which is rubbing against the maximum that could be supported with food. We're going to be running short of water and short of food. So it doesn't matter about oil running out or climate change, a much bigger problem there. But we have in our book dealt with that 1984 right-wing coup that Roger Douglas led in our parliament, because it was tremendously significant that New Zealand set off down the wrong path so very, very definitely, and we're right following that path now.
And this is the book here.
Yeah.
Okay, and so here's the book. Guys, it's New Zealand 2030, The World's Lifeboat by Dr. John Robinson.
Available for $10.
Okay.
And worth reading.
Well, we'll call it quits here, guys, and we'll be seeing you shortly.